Okay, my people. Welcome to FBA All Day, the show all about justice and understanding for our people. I am the Lord Eric Steele, aka Big Rossi Love, the perpetual student of the survival scrolls, where if you know, you know. I've been sent a lot of emails on today's topic, and I want to get right into it because this one is a very, I don't want to say sensitive, but it has a lot of weight with our people. Okay. Today, we're going to shine the Skinfolk spotlight on former President Mr. Barack Obama. He is a special individual. We have to we give him his credit. We don't want to downgrade anything about any of his accomplishments. I give him credit for all his accomplishments and the things that he has done for our people here. But when we take a look back, when we have some retrospective looks back on all this, there are some things that need to be addressed. Okay, we're gonna have to get into it. Um, we, I speak personally for myself. When I was first learning of the man, when he was coming from Chicago, he was running for office there. Then when he decided that he was going to run for the office of the presidency, I felt a certain kind of way. I felt a certain pride because back in those times, um, our people, we were all about Africa. We were all for the motherland. We all considered everybody one. I'm speaking as a foundational Black American, a member of the b-boy age, a member of the hip hop community. Um, we always considered them among us. We always gave big up to the motherland. We started out. I don't know where this thing where they come up with these sayings like we used to call them African booty scratcher. I personally have never used that crazy saying because it's whack. It's really not even funny. So if I had to roast somebody, I wouldn't use that as the term to roast somebody. My roasts were primarily personally aimed. If a person had a problem with me, I would address that person. And African booty scratcher is really not that. That's not that personable of a term. You understand what I'm saying? That's not a term that I would use to roast somebody who was coming for me or who needed to be addressed. That term is so elementary and it's really not even funny to me. So that's not one I would use personally. Now I'm not saying that nobody has ever used that term against somebody because that would be asinine. But me myself in the circles that I traveled in, we had more skill than that. Okay, so that wasn't one of the terms we used. Now if you think back to the age of hip hop and b boyism where we were coming from, after I say when De La Soul and the Tribe and the Jungle Brothers started getting it in, we started actually wearing little medallions with pictures of Africa on it. That's how much we respected the motherland. And even before that, back when we was breaking, we used to listen to people named Africa Bambaataa. He was big in our community. We respected Africa. We had love for Africa. We were considering, them as part of like an extended family at that time. Gradually, over time, as the years and decades have grown, these crazy people is that the way that things are being perceived now is off the charts. It's like they hear what another group of people is telling them about us. And if that was a man, we have other terms we would call them, but I'm not even going to put those terms into the lexicon right now. I'm going to let that slide. But imagine a man who you bigged up getting his come up, coming over, working, getting his come up, and then that man turning against you. That's what it's like. That's where all this is stemming from. It's just disrespect. It's a lot of misunderstanding and disrespect because they lack the knowledge of our history. They turn disrespectful. And you could say, oh, it's not their fault. They don't know y'all's history. Yeah, but it's not our fault. You don't know our history either. It's not our fault you haven't taken the time to learn what you're talking about. Do you understand that? Does that make sense? So I don't want to hear, oh, you guys have always hated. You have to stop taking your narrative from people outside of our community because this constantly happens. And this guy is I'm going to have to put, when the spotlight shines today on Barack Obama, I'm going to point these things out because this is what happens when we have a person who's not all in, but who is in a position of power. When you are in a position of power and you look like us, you're supposed to be representing us. You're not supposed to treat us any differently, is what they say. Oh, well, he's not the president of just black people. He's the president of everybody. Okay, well, how come he didn't treat us like he treated everybody? He treated us with the same disrespect as everybody else. More subtly, but the disrespect is there. And if you're a thinking person, you know exactly what I mean. And I'll indulge. So let's go on. Let's get to the meat of the matter first. Let's go ahead and get the facts out of the way. The spotlight is shining on him as a skinfolk. He's not one of us. He has our skin, but he's not like us. What are you saying, Eric Steele? Well, first of all, his dad, the deadbeat dad, they like to talk crap about us all the time. Well, you guys just make baby mamas. What do you think his father did? That's one of their biggest talking points against foundational black Americans. Oh, you guys make baby mama. President Obama was the product of a deadbeat dad. His father was from Kenya. He didn't marry his mother. I don't want to say he did marry. I'm not sure specifically if he married or not, but I know he didn't raise Barack. Barack was raised by his mother, who was an Irish woman named Stanley. Her and her father raised Barack. His dad wasn't there. His dad was a Kenyan. Okay? So there's no direct tie to the foundational black Americans here. You understand that? The part of him that's American is of the Caucasian dominant society. And his dad, the black part of him, is from Africa. So he has no tie with us. Okay? So Skinfolk and the spotlight is shining on him today. So Barack Obama is today's Skinfolk spotlight star. Barack Obama became prominent in 2009 in a real way when he became president. Now, it's real significant. I want you to look at that date, 2009. Okay? These are when things started to slide off of a slope for us because two major things melted together. You had the first perceived black president, which we are, right? Barack Obama was nominated and he was considered the first black president, even though we know that's not entirely accurate, okay? That was 2009. So we had the perceived first black president, for those that are unlearned, and we have the age of information at the same time. The age of information and the first black president collided, okay? So we have more and more people witnessing things. We have more and more people able to give their public opinion, okay? These things collided, all right? And it became very key. Now, prior to Barack Obama, the party called the Democrats had been the primary choice for foundational black Americans in this country. That was that was what we dominantly selected when we went to vote. We would just choose Democrat. But as we began to take account, as we began to pay more and more attention, as we began to match these things up with what people say, match these things up and start to see what they did to us during the crack epidemic, we begin to learn about the things that were done to us in those experiments. We begin to see the little things that have been done to our people, and now we have the facts and evidence so that we can match these things up and align them to see what the repercussions are. You understand? We can now see what the cause and effect is. We can see what happened when they put that big bill together where they were sending all of our black men to prison. We can see the effect of that. We can see the effect that had on the black family now. Okay? So now we're more aware. We have more information. We can make more intelligent decisions because we have the numbers now. These things are more glaring. Okay, so as time starts to go on, we have the ability to see and use these informations and details, and we have the mass media coming in as well. So now these things are meshing, and we can see. And it came to a point for me specifically in 2009. Now, in 2009, January, Barack Obama was went through his inauguration for the presidency, and by July, which is a very specific time of year for Black folks, we seem to get our most, we seem to get closer and closer during the hotter months. We seem to become we come into our own at these times of the year. We're more awake, we're more spiritual, we're more active in the warmer times of the year here. July, there was a doctor, a black doctor named Dr. Gates out at Harvard. His incident sparked a lot. I'm gonna go. I'm just gonna glaze over it. If you want to dig into it, you're free to go back and Google all this. Okay. In July, I think it was July 16th, 2009, Dr. Gates was. Now, this is a prominent. This is a guy that works at Harvard. He's a professor at Harvard. He's a prominent black man. This guy's getting driven around in a Mercedes. So let me make sure people understand the setup here, because a lot of people like to glaze over the initial details. This is a man who was driven to his home. Okay, he had a driver. He was driven to his home. It had been, I don't think it was raining, or to some effect it was raining, or some kind of storm or something. Anyhow, his front door was, it needed to have like you had to kind of shove it to get in. Now, his neighbor, a member of the dominant society, a white woman who has always been the worst for our people, she made a phone call to the police and said that people were breaking into the house. Okay? She had no evidence that this was a break-in. If she didn't know that that was him, then she should have seen the key. She should have seen them using the key and then bumping the door. But she left all that out. You see what I'm saying? They leave that stuff out intentionally. To me, this should be a crime. This should be a crime that should be included in our crime bill for foundational black Americans when we go for it. People who make these blaringly false police reports, they should be held accountable. Because she knew he didn't just walk up and kick the door. He put his key in. The door needed to be nudged. That doesn't mean he's breaking into the house. And who drives up to break into somebody's house being driven in a Mercedes? What burglar do you know does that? That's not even remotely close to what you would be looking for. With bags. Okay? With travel bags, with suitcases. She thought, forget all that. They're breaking in. We'll get back to that. That's the premise. So she called, said they were breaking in, and the officers showed up with their aggressions, okay? Now, their tone, when you're speaking to somebody of this aptitude, you can't talk to a person of that accomplishment like they're a child. He wouldn't do that to any other group of people. I don't care what you say. They have certain groups of people that they use certain tactics on, okay? They tried to demean him. They were using demeaning tones. And he was defensive, obviously. Any man, you don't even have to be black. I see many men defend themselves against the oppressive nature of these people when they get on. Half of them are not even good at their job. They only get 16 weeks of training. Most of them don't know the law. They don't even know the real law in the areas that they're patrolling. They don't know. How many times have you seen cases get kicked out in court because the officer did something wrong or he didn't know? We'll get that. That's a whole nother story. We'll get into that later. But most of the time, they don't know what they're talking about. They are law enforcement, not feelings enforcement. Okay? So, this is what it is. That's where that started. Now, what happened? A little back and forth. Now, obviously, the police are going to have the upper hand because they are the authoritative figure in that instance, because they are representatives of the government. So they have the authority in this case. Even though Dr. Gates was on his property, he hadn't done anything wrong, he wound up being detained. He wound up being arrested, okay? This became a thing. Obama addressed it, okay? He addressed this incident, but then there was some backlash, okay? Then there was some backlash. And instead of him standing on his 2 feet, instead of him standing like a man on what he had said, he started backtracking. He started trying to make amends. And next thing you know, well, I'm not going to say the next thing you know. Let's back it up a little bit. Let's back it up a little bit. He wanted to make it seem as though he wasn't trying to rock the boat. He didn't want it to be I wouldn't say a black thing because nobody said anything about being black, even though that was the undertone of the incident. He wanted to try to make things right without it sliding too far sideways, I'll say. He didn't want it to get out of hand, if you will. Even though that was a perfect time for him to lay down things the right way. He could have at that moment said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to put this law into effect. We're going to give protections to these mighty black people here. He didn't even have to say foundational black then. He could have just said we could have put some protections in place for black homeowners. If these people have worked hard enough to purchase a home, if these people have worked hard enough to be able to rent a home in their assigned dwelling, in their dwelling that they are responsible for, we're going to have some protection laws in place. People who make phone calls or who make these type of set up phone calls to the police on black people that are not doing anything wrong, these people need to be held accountable. It's people that get killed over these phone calls. That was a perfect time for him to be a stand-up guy and address that. That would have been perfect. I'm going to propose that Congress write a bill, or that there's some sort of what are those things Trump does? Those Trump writes them all the time. Put something together to say these guys are not going to be able to just walk up to people on their own property. You know what I'm saying? It shouldn't be a way for them to wind up in cuffs, especially if there's no violence. Because first of all, if you're on that person's property, you're trespassing. You are trespassing on that person's property. Once it's known that that's their property, there should be protections for our people for these instances. And I've been saying that. All these swatting calls, they tried that mess on Tariq Nasheed at one time too, if I can remember. They sent the SWAT team and all of them showed up at his house. But that's not the purpose of today's story, so we'll save that for another day. Anyhow, what Barack did do, was he called the policemen to the what? He didn't bring them together. He didn't say, let's bring both of these men together and let's have a conversation. That's not what he said. He didn't say, since this is such a public issue, since the public is so interested in this issue and it's such a big thing right now, let's bring both sides together. Let's make this thing work out to the benefit of all parties. He didn't do that. He didn't do that. That's not what he did. And this is not the first time that he's abandoned our people to make to make other people happy. He already has done that, but this one hurt the most. He brought the cop to the White House. He brought the person who arrested a man on his own property. He brought that person to the White House and shared a beer with him. Let's have a beer. That was the first stab in the back as far as I'm concerned. The first issue that I had with him was the matter of his church. He attended a black church before. And because that particular minister, I can't believe if he was Muslim, whatever it was, the dominant society started questioning about his affiliation with that church, and Obama stopped going. He stopped dealing with that pastor. He stopped dealing with that person. I should have got a little bit more details about that, but that's not the purpose of today's story. I'm just trying to tell you that wasn't the first time he's turned his back on our people, is my point. So he brought the cop to the White House and they shared a beer. And you know what did happen out of that? They put a bill together for the protection of police. Think about that for a second. This man had done nothing wrong. He was on a trip. He was driven home by his driver, pulled up in a Mercedes, was at his home. His door was a little stuck. He had to, put a little oomph into the door to get into the door. Okay? He had the key for the door. He didn't kick the door in. Somebody falsely accuses him. A member of the dominant society sends the police there under the guise that there's a felony being committed. Okay? They're sending them there under the guise that there's a felony being committed. Now the police show up. Any good cop could take a good assessment of that area when they pulled up. There's a Mercedes in the driveway. There's a Mercedes out front. These people are not wearing anything to hide their identification. They're not wearing masks. They're not wearing gloves. There's nothing for you to assume these people are burglars. So all those are done before you even get into the conversation. You can see they're not running. They're not trying to dodge you. So you can kind of quail because the person who's calling, they don't know. That's an assumption. You don't know if the person who called is a nut. You have no idea. You don't know that. And not only that, but the call was anonymous. When a person doesn't even have the gall to put their name on what they're saying, you have to be cautious with that information. You have to be. It's anonymous. But instead, they took it the other way. Okay? Obama gave them a bill behind that. The blue bill came out of that. They got more money. They got set-asides. That was the first stab in the back for me personally. That's the first one that hurt me. I'm going to say that. That's the first one that hurt me. But then as we look back, as I say, we have the numbers now. But then I start to see how things started sliding from there for our people. Once the dominant, it's like once they understood that he wasn't going to stand up for our people, it's like the floodgates. Somebody slowly opened the gate. And now it was okay to hurt our people or to do things against our people because they know the man in charge is not going to do anything. They know that the man in charge is not going to do anything. You understand? So now it's almost like open season on our people because of him. And I'll explain. In February 2012, we lost one of our youngsters. We lost Trayvon Martin. Okay? The injustice there was so blatant. I had that case figured out when I saw the pictures that were given and I heard the story that was told. I had that case solved in 15 minutes. It's so obvious. They denied all logic. They let all reasonable logic go. And I want you to flip that around when we're done. I'm going to give you what the story was. The story was this guy who was like a neighborhood watch guy. Turns out he was the son of a former judge. He's following this kid around in a gated community, first of all. The kid's not bothering anybody. He's going to the store to get him some snacks or whatever. He's not doing anything. He didn't witness him doing anything. He followed him because he was black. Point blank and period. He didn't witness that kid do anything wrong, just that he was around the area. Okay? So he's stalking. That's one. That's called stalking. Two, when he called the police or when he was talking to the dispatch, they told him to stop following that boy. He was told not to follow him. That's fact number one. He was instructed not to follow the kid. Okay? He did it anyway. Okay? He followed the kid and eventually he contacted the kid. He made contact with this child. This grown man made contact with this child, a Latino. George Zimmerman is Latin. Made contact with the black kid and wound up tussling with the boy defending himself against this grown man who has no business to be talking to him in the first place. And the story was that Trayvon Martin had grabbed him and got the upper hand and was banging his head on the concrete, and he was about to lose conscious, so he shot him. And that's the part that's a lie. First of all, when you look at the pictures of George Zimmerman's head on the back, that's not the scar that's left when you smack somebody's head on the concrete. That is the picture of a scrape, of a scratch, maybe going through the bushes. That's how that happened. Maybe he scraped his head on something else, or maybe somebody did it after and maybe he did it after the occurrence. But if a person is banging your head on the concrete, your skull flattens. Okay? You get abrasions. You bruise. Look at the picture of the back of George Zimmerman's head. Those pictures are still online. That is not what your head looks like when somebody bangs your head on the concrete. That's not what it looks like. Okay? There's not a little split and some blood drip. That's not the way it happens. First of all, when your head splits, you're on the ground. So it smears. It doesn't trickle down. It smears. So we know that part is a lie. Then he said that Trayvon was on top of him when he shot him. We know that's a lie. Any grown person or anybody that's ever shot a gun, you know that when you shoot somebody, the blood spatters. It spatters. You understand what I'm saying? George Zimmerman was wearing a white t-shirt. Look at the picture of him from that day and look at that white t-shirt. There's no blood on it. That is physically impossible. If Trayvon was over him when he shot him, the blood would have been on his shirt. It would have been on his face. It would have been on him somewhere. It would have been on him somewhere. He would have had blood on him. That's just a fact. That's just a fact. From the way he described the incident, he would have been covered in blood. And he wasn't. George Zimmerman is a blatant liar. And you know how this went down in Florida, which is one of the most notorious racist states in American history. They've always been that way ever since General Jackson started stealing the land from the foundational black Americans down there in Florida. I have a specific tie to that land because my people is a part of that lineage. My people is a part of the lineage that came from there. So we know all about the lying racism that happens in Florida, okay? And all the things they've done to our people and our children and our native comrades and the like down there. So we know all about Florida, but this happened in Florida, okay? They didn't dig into his background like they do for black people. They didn't say nothing about that DUI he got. George Zimmerman got pulled over for DUI, and somehow that magically disappeared. When does that ever happen for a black person? I'd love to meet the black person that got pulled over for drinking and driving, being over the limit for driving, and that case disappeared. I'd love to meet that person because they didn't mention it at all when he went to trial. There was no talking about George Zimmerman's bad history of these things at all. They didn't dig into his history at all. I'd love to see the place where black people, where our DUIs are removed, because I know so many people's lives has been ruined and destroyed by these DUI convictions. Not George Zimmerman. For some reason, is it a coincidence that his dad was a judge and he gets to remove stuff off his records? It was a quinky dink, huh? Flip that around. Imagine if a white kid was walking home and a black guy called the cops and the cops said, please stop following that child. And you started following the child anyway. You continue to follow the child anyway. You get into an altercation with that child and you kill the child that they told you to stop following in the first place. Can you tell me who would believe that black person would get off? Take a second and think about that and let me know where that would happen. I'm not going to wait for the answer because you and I both know what the answer would be. That would not happen. Okay? So there you are. 2012. That happened under Obama's watch. a huge thing because of our now we're coming into our social media, we're coming into, the age of information. It's everywhere. The story is everywhere. And the lie is apparent. That lie is super apparent to anybody with common sense. For somebody to say that that story George told is believable, that they are just showing that they are a perpetual member of the white supremacy system is all that means to me, because that it doesn't make any sense to any grown adult. And those adults who pretend that it does make sense, I just count them amongst the dominant society, okay? But Obama had another black man as attorney general. His name was Eric Holder. Eric Holder had the full capabilities of correcting this issue, but he didn't. He didn't do anything. He didn't say anything about this. Then you might wonder why. Yeah, Eric Holder, he's not a foundational black American either. He doesn't have any tie to our people here. Yeah, he's not from here. His people are not from here. Okay? Then that lays over a little bit. 2014, we had an incident in New York. I tell you, these things happen in July. Eric Garner was murdered in New York. He was choked to death in New York by a cop. Now, the premise was the reason why they were messing with him in the first place is because he was selling loose cigarettes. And you say, well, what's wrong with him selling loose? Oh, well, they're not paying tax when he does. Listen, when he purchased the cigarettes, he paid the tax. What he did with the cigarettes after he pays the tax is none of your business. That's none of your business. It shouldn't be. He paid his tax when he bought the cigarettes. The tax is paid. It shouldn't be anybody's business what happens after that. But apparently, that's something worth dying for in New York. I think that was Officer Patilio that did that to him, that killed Eric Gardner. And the way that they took this guy's humanity, this guy's struggling. He's just trying to, make a little extra money, do a little side hustle. You leave that person alone. That doesn't need policing. He's not forcing anybody to buy a cigarette from him. He wasn't walking up to people sticking cigarettes in their hand going, you buy this cigarette. This is a person-to-person exchange. What's the difference between that and selling a bike or selling a piece of furniture? It's the same premise. If you have a bedroom set and you say, hey, I want to sell my bedroom set, then they come to buy the bedroom set. You don't go, hey, let me get the tax for that. It's the same, it's the same premise. It's the same premise. You bought your furniture, you decide to sell it, that's your business. It's the same premise. Let's say you want to, that's a big item. Okay, let's say a cell phone. If you want to sell your cell phone to somebody, you don't have to go, oh, you owe me tax on that. That's ridiculous. The tax was paid when you purchased the item. When you purchased it. When Eric Gardner purchased the cigarettes, he paid the tax. Do you see what I'm saying? How these stories, they don't hold any water, and they get these bubble-headed people in there who fall for the nonsense for some reason. I don't know where they find these people that let these people off. Under no circumstances does that make any sense. That was not a reason to choke a man to death. A black man at that. Under Obama once again. The last words of Brother Eric Gardner were, I can't breathe. He was literally telling them, I can't breathe. He's a heavyset guy, has breathing issues. He's telling you, I can't breathe. Why are you choking somebody that big anyway? What part of police training says to choke a man like that's not presenting any type of a threat? Choke that person out. Happened under Obama. He was telling him he couldn't breathe. He still choked him out. Still in the heat months, the summer months, Mike Brown happened August 9th. Same year. Same year, 2014. Mike Brown. This one was huge because Mike Brown was a kid. It was a child. From the people I spoke to personally, the people that lived there, I can give you their names if well, I'd like to speak to them before I gave their names, but I know people that were living there that I've spoken with, and they all say the same thing. That boy had his hands up when that cop killed him. His hands were up. Without question, people with an unobstructed view from an apartment right there. They were watching, because anybody knows about black communities, when a cop car is in the area and the lights are on, everybody's paying attention. They saw that boy's hands were up. That's called first-hand account. Okay? That's called a first-hand account. Plenty of them. Eric Holder didn't interview any of them. They weren't called to testify. They weren't interviewed. None of that. The people that were immediately in that area, immediately, like in that surrounding apartment complex, people that witnessed that thing, that came forth and said, hey, I saw the whole thing. His hands were up when that guy shot him, when the cop shot him. When the cop started shooting him, his hands were up. For some reason, Eric Holder's Department of Justice, they couldn't find those people. Instead, they brought a witness in who not only didn't know what he was talking about, he wasn't even there on the day of the incident. Their star witness had no idea what he was talking about. And I don't understand how that's not perjury. They used some draconian law from way back in the days where cops used to be able to shoot a black person for running as the premise to let Officer Wilson off. Instead of Eric Holder and his Department of Justice realizing, hey, that law is not a law that's being used today. That's an old law that you guys are using and you're telling these people about, that the cops have a right to kill somebody running. That's not an actual law anymore. Instead of their correcting that, instead of them holding those people accountable for presenting the people with that law, nothing happened. And they let Officer Wilson off. And I'll tell you from another perspective how his story was nonsense as well. Mike Brown was over 6 feet tall. Mike Brown was at least 260. He was a big guy. Officer Wilson's story was that Mike Brown was assaulting him in the car. And his specific word I remember him saying was, he hit me so hard I thought I was going to black out. He was hitting me so hard I thought I was going to black out. Now, for us people with common sense, we know that a pale-skinned officer getting hit by a man that big, by a person that big, he would have had not only a black eye or a busted lip, especially if you're about to lose consciousness. That is a solid punch. He would have had some sort of bruising or swelling. Now, I want you to get a chance and Google Officer Wilson's picture. No swelling, no redness. His story is nonsense. It's a lie. That's not what happened. His account of what happened. We can get all week now. You can dig into the story itself and go back to the store, or they thought he was stealing, even though he paid for stuff. All that's irrelevant. I don't care about any of that. What I cared about is that this officer took that boy's life. He murdered him. He shot that boy in the back, and that boy's hands were up because of the placement of the bullets. We could tell where he was shot. He had his hands up. There's no question about that. And there's eyewitness testimony to the fact. That's 2 times now. That's 2 times now we have blatant evidence that we can see. That story does not hold water. We can see. There's evidence. You understand? This is happening under Obama. And they'll say, well, if it's a black president, if there's something really wrong, they will correct it. But you got to remember, he's not of our ilk. He's not really one of us. He's not a foundational black American. He doesn't feel what we feel. He doesn't feel that. He doesn't feel that. He doesn't understand that suffering that we're going through because he's not suffering. You understand that? He don't feel the connection. Eric Holder didn't act like he had the heart to go and find the truth. His actions doesn't prove that. That's not the actions of an AG who's uh, going to get to the bottom of it. That's not those actions. All those blatant off track things that happen with no repercussions. They weren't after the truth. They just wanted it to blow over. They just wanted us to get over it. Okay. A little further on down the line, I mean, the police are just off the hook at this point. They're just off the hook at this point. Now they see that they can kill an unarmed child and nothing happened to them. Oh, it's off. They're off the leash now. Now they're off the leash. Once they know that they could just shoot an unarmed child to death in the middle of the street in broad daylight and nothing happened to them, oh, it's off the rails now. Now they got to go ahead. This black guy don't give a damn about these people. He don't care. We can go in now. Now we can go in. Tamir Rice happens. Another member of the dominant society making another false phone call that cost a black person, a black child, their life. Tamir Rice was at a park playing with a toy gun, which is what children do. And he was playing in a park in a state that has a open carry law, if I'm not mistaken. You're allowed to have guns in this state. So even if he was carrying a gun, until you assess that it's not his gun, you can't assume that he's doing anything wrong. The police pulled up on this child playing in the park and within seconds had shot and killed that baby on somebody's phone call. She knew they were out there playing. She knew they were kids. The cop, I thought it was a grown man. He thought a 12-year-old child was a grown man. That person has no business on a police force. If you are a academy-trained police officer and you pull up on a 12-year-old boy and you consider him a man, you should not be working on anybody's police force. You shouldn't be on any. He should be banned for life. He killed somebody's child for no reason. Within seconds, he killed that child. That happened under Obama. That was 2014. Of course we were outraged. Of course our people were outraged. We were going in. It's not in a video. The video shows him pulling up, and within seconds, he had murdered that child. Eric Holder, his Department of Justice is lacking something. It might as well just be department, because it didn't mean no justice for our people. That guy should have been barbecued at the stake for what he did to that child. Tamir Rice was murdered by the police, point blank. Then we had Freddie Gray, another incident that happened. This is April 2015. I want you to listen to this story. Not sure about what listen, I'm not here to give you judgment on the crimes themselves. That's none of my business. I'm more concerned about justice for our people. Whatever happened previous to whatever happened leading up to his arrest, I know when Freddie Gray got into the police van, he was handcuffed and he was walking in the van under his own fruition. He wasn't needing assistance. He was healthy. He was fine. By the time Freddie Gray got to the police station, he had a severed spinal cord. Let me say that again. By the time Freddie Gray got to the police department, he had a severed spinal cord. Okay. He's in police custody. There's no doubt they're responsible. That happened in their custody. Okay? Imagine if the cops had a white person in custody and were transporting him somewhere and he was healthy when he got in the van, and by the time they got to the station, that person's spine was severed. What do you think would happen to those black officers? What do you think would happen? His spine was severed. Surely the Department of Justice is going to take care of this. There's no way to lie out of that. He was fine getting in. His spine is severed coming out. Not a peep. Not a word. Nothing. Okay. As time heated up, we came across the loss of our sister, Sandra Bland, that July the 13th. I remember because this thing stung me so much in my heart, man. July the 13th, 2015, our sister was on a trip. She was relocating, going to start another chapter of her life. For some reason, this lady gets pulled over and put in jail. Then their story is she hung herself, which is the most ridiculous, asinine thing I'd ever heard. First of all, we need to put it into the atmosphere, put it into the ethos. Black people are not hanging themselves. That's not something we do. We are not hanging ourselves. That's not something we do. They need to stop that lie. Every time you see these cases of there's a mysterious black person found hanging, that person is being murdered by the locals. He's being murdered by, and I suspect that the police department is in on it because they come to conclusions that are ridiculous. There was one story in Charlotte where they found a black dude hanging. His shoes were missing. There was nothing for him to have been standing on. You know, when you hang yourself, the way they tell it, you put your head in a noose and you kick whatever you're standing on away. There wasn't even nothing for him to be standing on. His shoes were missing. He had just bought a new pair of Jordans. The Jordans were gone, and there was nothing for him to stand on. And they came to the conclusion he hung himself. You see what I'm saying? That's how you know they're in on it. That makes no sense at all. People for no reason that aren't going through any particular trauma, there's nothing going on in their lives, they just hang themselves. Black people ain't doing that. That's a lie. Every single instance of that happening is a lie. That is them being murdered. That's them being lynched. And the local authorities are in on it. Period. We don't have to play games. We're all grown-ups and adults here. Let's not mince words. They are murdering black people. Those are murders. I don't care. It's murders. There's no black people, especially foundational black Americans and all the trauma we've dealt with as far as hanging goes. We are not hanging ourselves. That is a lie. In every country that hears these broadcasts, when you hear that story that a black person hung himself, just know that's a lie. He did not hang himself. He was murdered. And the people who are telling you he hung himself, they are in on it. Those municipalities, they're in on it. The local police department or local sheriffs or somebody in that community, they are in on it. Okay? And if they're not directly in on it, it's the brother of somebody working with the police, and they don't want to find the truth. They don't want to find the truth because they know it leads to their family member. That's what's happening, and it's not hard to figure out. Any real sleuth can get to the bottom of it because ain't no black person hanging themselves. That's not reality. That's not what happens. Now, you go back and you do the research on how many of these cases you see and remember what I told you. They are murdering black people. Black people are not hanging themselves. That is a lie. I know black people. I know black people from the north. I know black people from the south. I know black people in the west coast, black people in the north. I know black people. I know my people. We do not hang ourselves. That is a blatant lie. And anybody who tells you we're hanging ourselves is a lie, especially people who are not in jail, who are not incarcerated. That is a lie. It is what it is. Sandra Bland, her story was, oh, well, she hung herself. When she was going to bail out, why would she hang herself? That makes no sense. It makes no sense. So, with that knowledge, it happened in a jail cell where there just happens to be cameras. And let me show you the trick bag. Let me show you how they tried to play with people's emotions. They gonna show you the video of the person who found her. That's the video they released. As if we're stupid. When it was brought up that there's video that should show who was the last person that went into her cell. They sent the video of the cop that went in and found her. They didn't show you the video before that. Show us the video of the person before the person that found us, as if we're retarded. Eric Holder's Department of Justice, they couldn't figure that part out. Eric Holder, the AG Eric Holder, they couldn't figure out, they sent a video of the cop that found her. No. Go back further. Who was the person before the cop found her? That's the person that killed her. It's not that hard to figure out. It's not hard to figure out. They think people are stupid. We were not dumb. They murdered Sandra Bland. And they had the evidence of it. Oh, yeah, they had the evidence of it. Of course they did. All this happened under Obama. Obama and Eric Holder, Batman and Doofus. Okay. These things happen, and they just kept misleading our people. But we have facts now. These things it's a part of history. You can't remove this. Okay? This comes to light, and the light shines on Obama more recently for his little interview that he had with his wife and her brother, who was a member of the alphabet community. And I don't have a problem with members of the alphabet community. I don't have any particular problem because I'm a grown man. Your sexual preference, I don't care about that. That's not my business. I don't go around telling people my business in the bedroom. Why do I have to know your business? I don't care. I don't need to know. It doesn't matter to me. So I don't have an opinion about your sexual preference. Matters nothing to me. But for some reason, Obama and his Democratic followings, for some reason, they have this agenda where they're just intent on forcing people's sexuality down our throat. For some reason, I don't know why. But Obama came out of his mouth and said that in his personal experience, he had a great experience with a professor who happened to be gay, and that he believes that all black boys was what I took effect with. He said black boys should have some sort of an interaction with a gay mentor or a gay I, I don't even know why advisor. Instead of saying every black boy should have a mentor with some education or some skill set, or should have a mentor with a black man or a member of their or a member of their ethno group, should have should have a mentor of extreme discipline, maybe a military man that can teach them discipline, or a coach that can teach that person discipline, like Coach Deion Sanders, like Coach Prime, that can teach the kids discipline and teach them the ways of being a man. No, he thought that they should have, for some reason, a gay person should do it. A gay man should be, you should let your child have a gay mentor. Why on God's green earth does that make sense to him? That makes no sense. Why does the preference, the sexual preference, make a difference in who's mentoring our boys? Do you see the nonsense there? And then he tried to backtrack. I didn't say all boys. I don't want to hear it. This guy is not good for our people. And I know your grandma loves him. I know y'all got his little pictures up in your kitchens and all this kind of carrying on. But if you look back at his accomplishments and the things he's done for our people here, Obama is not good for foundational black Americans. He is not one that should be held in high regards for our people. I'm not talking about his tenure in the United States president. I know he didn't have any scandals. I'm not taking that away from him. I know he's married to the same mother of his children. I'm not taking that away from him. But here's something that my grandparents used to teach me. You don't get credit for things you're supposed to do. You're not supposed to have scandals. You're not supposed to have a bunch of different wives and different kids. That's not the way it's supposed to be. So you don't get credit for doing what you're supposed to do. You understand? But what you were supposed to do, because you weren't just our president, but you were indeed our president, and you did not defend us as if you were our president. We were lambs to the slaughter under your tenure, under your reign as president, under your position as the president. The most horrible things happened to our people. The most, not the most horrible, but the most public. And you did nothing. We had no recourse and no support from you. You are not for our people as far as Lord Eric Steele is concerned. I'm not talking about you as the man, but as far as our people is concerned, you don't have a son. How can you give advice on what a father with a son should do with his son when you don't have a son? Speaking as a father with a few sons, I would like for you to stay out of our business. Don't give us advice on how to raise our sons because you don't have a son. Not because you're not a foundational black American, which you're not. Not because you have no spine, which you don't. Not because you don't care about our people, which you don't. Just on a man-to-man type of level. You don't have a son. Don't speak about the boys. We don't send our boys to situations that can become a problem. Are you going to take responsibility if some person listening to you goes and finds a gay mentor and that mentor turns around and, God forbid, molests that boy like a Catholic priest? Are you going to take account for what happens if that happens? Are you going to take account for that? Are you going to say, oh, my bad, I told you to send your boy to this, and that's what happened? You don't know the mindset of every gay person. You have no idea. For you to make a statement as broad as that for our people who's already in an underbelly, already suffering, is not only disrespectful, but it's intelligently ignorant. That was an ignorant thing for you to say. What does your sexual preference have to do with being a mentor? Because they're gay, they're supposed to have some special set of feelings? Is that what you're trying to imply? Because I reject that as well. A child growing up with both his parents has everything he needs to be a successful adult. He doesn't need a mentor from the gay community. Now, I'm not saying that all gay guys could be bad. That's not what I'm saying. But if 5,000 snakes are coming at you, but only 1,000 want to bite you, do you discern which one of them? Because they all look alike. Are you going to take the time to discern which one means you harm? Or are you just going to avoid that situation? You don't put your child in a situation that could potentially go sideways. We don't do that as parents. As real men, we don't do that. We don't put our children in harm's way. We don't do that. Your comment was irresponsible, is my point. And that's why former President Barack Obama had the spotlight shined on him, and I'll list out my list of grievances, and that was just a few. That's not even all. Those are the main ones that stung me personally. Those are the ones that hit me the hardest. Those are the ones that stung me the most. And that's why we chose him for today's episode, a Skinfolk Spotlight on FBA All Day. Lord Eric Steele, bringing you this heat continually. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. I love my people. Keep sending the emails. I'm going to keep breaking it down for you. All right, one.